Well, elections analyst Wayne Sussman joins us now for more on the story. Wayne, I'm quite interested to talk about how the opposition parties are framing this convention, already selling the idea of an ANC that is out of power. But a part of me feels that at this point, maybe overstating their position, they simply don't know how voters are going to vote in 2024.
Thank you, Kathy, and it's great to be speaking to you. This is obviously going to be one of the most closely contested elections since 1994. We know that the ANC, the party which has been in power since 1994, is more vulnerable than it was in any previous election. Having said that, the Moonshot Pact, which John Steenhuisen and Mr. Khabisa, who are both speaking about it now, has a long way to go in achieving two important things from their perspective. And the one is to bring the ANC under 50%. And the second thing is to bring the ANC and its likely coalition partners below 50%. And while there is an outside possibility of the first thing happening, because I think the ANC is currently hovering on the 50% mark, I think it's quite unlikely for it to fall so low that it will not find partners, whether it are smaller partners like who it's currently working with, like the African Independent Congress, the AIC, Al-Jamaa, or GOOD, or larger partners who it's currently working with, like the Patriotic Alliance. And then also, obviously, there's the EFF, which the Moonshot Pact has, particularly John Steenhuisen, has spoken quite a lot about. So there's a long way to go. This is an interesting development, and one has to ask this question. Will the sum be greater than its parts? So without a shadow of a doubt, a party like the Inkatha Freedom Party, we just heard about, has tremendous momentum right now. It's been winning by-elections across the length and breadth of KwaZulu-Natal. However, if we take plus the IFP, plus Action SA, and the Freedom Front, who are the four largest parties right now in this Moonshot Pact, I find it hard to see them getting close to 40% of the vote.
When you listen to the statements that are coming through from the different parties that are part of this pact, it sounds like they're already doing some sort of victory dance. And I wonder what you think the impact of that is going to be in the minds of voters, because South Africans, at least voting population, have shown themselves traditionally to not always go in the direction that we often predict. You know, I can remember a number of times where the ANC was said that they were close on losing the election, and what simply did not happen is that, you know, the voter turnout, at least the number of people that turned out to vote, simply kept the ANC in power. Instead, what people do is that they stay away from elections.
That's a great point you make. We live in a multi-party democracy, and often the point has been made, and that's why I said about is the sum greater than its parts, that people might identify more with the values of, say, the DA or the identity put forward of the IFP or the Freedom Front. It's very clear who IFP and the Freedom Front fundamentally represent. Now, if you're going to, and look, we have to see what's going to happen in the middle of August when people gather to discuss the Moonshot Pact and the convention which John Steenhuisen spoke about. But will it lose some of its novel identity by putting together an offering which is not tangible for voters? And I want to remind viewers, and it's very important to look at recent South African political history. I think it was either in 1999 or 2004, there was a famous picture of Tony Leon, then the leader of the DP or the DA, holding the hand of Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the president of the Inkatha Freedom Party. And in a way, this was a very smart partnership because they weren't fishing in each other's pools for voters. The DA fundamentally then was appealing to minority voters and more urban voters, and the IFP appealing more to Zulu voters, more rural voters in KwaZulu-Natal, but they didn't come close to knocking the ANC off its perch in KwaZulu-Natal. So it's a very, very important point. but I think it's about voters and also about donors. Will the Moonshot Pact see donors who typically favor the DA, favor the IFP, favor the Freedom Front, favor Action SA, will it energize them to say, yes, we think the sum will be greater than the parts, and therefore we're going to get behind it and donate a lot more money to the Moonshot Pact and to these parties?
Wayne, one of the realities that we're dealing with here, you being an analyst in the space knows this better than I do. Unfortunately, we've got two graphs in the opposing directions. The number of options available to vote for increases by the year. The number of voters, eligible voters that participate in the election goes down every single cycle. That seems to me that that's where the real challenge for these opposition parties lie. The estimated 25% of voters, at least for this cycle of election, that will be sitting on the fence not knowing or being undecided about who to put their ballot with. What do you think it's going to take for these parties, including those that are coming together under this Moonshot Pact, to convince them of their vote? And this is not even taking into account what the fate of those independent candidates who will be standing for elections under Build One South Africa, what that is going to do.
Correct. We remember in the 2021 local government election that this was the lowest turnout in a major election in South African political history. And we also saw that in 2019 in a general election, in a national and provincial election. There are a huge number of South Africans who are not voting, and there are a great number of South Africans who have not registered. And that's going to be key. Can those signatories, or let's call them participants in the Moonshot Pact, energize voters to make them believe that there is a path to bringing the ANC under 50%, and again, weakening the ANC? And again, the first might be possible. The second, I think, is very unlikely right now. A lot can change in a year's time, but the ANC has got many paths and partners to potentially work with. That is going to be key. Can you get those millions of South Africans who are currently not planning on participating in the elections next year to participate? That will remain to be seen. The other thing which we have to remember is that there are parties and personalities who might think should be sitting around the Moonshot Pact table. The first three which come to mind, and their last names all begin with M, sorry, they don't actually all begin with M, but Musi Maimane, Kenneth Mesre, the leader of the African Christian Democratic Party, and Songezo Zibi from Rise Mzansi. These seem to me as as other potential joiners. But right now, what we are seeing is that, and I just want to go back to this about the donors and the voters, that many of these new parties and established parties are trying to say, we are going to make a major dent and impact on this election, but we're better at doing it on our own. So on the one hand, the Moonshot Pact has 6 participants right now, 7 participants right now. Can they get more and build momentum? Can they work together for a plan by the middle of August when they meet to say that Action SA supporters will say, we behind this, that Freedom Front supporters say, we behind this? That's going to be key. If they are unable to build momentum in a short space of time, this might be a stillborn project.
Wayne Sussman, thanks for your time tonight.